Arne Naess Jr. married Diana Ross in 1985, believing he was getting a wife. What he got was Berry Gordy's creation, a woman who couldn't separate person from brand, whose career made family life impossible, and whose attachment to Berry meant Arne competed with a ghost. Arne was a Norwegian billionaire, mountaineering and shipping magnate who'd built his own empire, didn't need Diana's money or fame. He wanted a partner. And for 14 years, Arne tried to build a marriage with someone whose identity was so completely consumed by stardom that the woman he'd fallen in love with barely existed outside of Diana Ross, the performer. By 2000, when the marriage ended, Arne had learned what Robert Silberstein had learned decades earlier. You can't have a real marriage with Diana Ross because Diana's career demands were immense. Some of y'all remember when Diana married Arne in 1985. Remember the fairy tale, Diana marrying a Norwegian billionaire, international glamour, the perfect second act. Remember media coverage suggesting Diana had finally found happiness. Remember thinking maybe this would work because Arne had his own wealth, wasn't intimidated by Diana's fame. But the fairy tale was actually 14 years of Arne realizing he'd married someone who would never be his wife. Arne Naess Jr. was born into Norwegian wealth and prominence. Arne Naess Sr. was a famous philosopher. Arne Jr. built a shipping and mountaineering equipment empire, climbed mountains all over the world, lived a life of adventure and physical challenge that had nothing to do with entertainment or fame. When Arne met Diana in the mid-1980s, he represented everything Diana's world wasn't: outdoorsy, physically adventurous, European, intellectually curious about philosophy and nature rather than obsessed with image and celebrity. The contrast was appealing to both of them. Arne thought he was marrying a woman who would embrace his adventurous lifestyle. Diana thought she was marrying someone who would worship her the way everyone in her professional life did. The wedding in February 1986 in Switzerland was lavish and international and covered extensively by media. Diana wore a wedding dress that cost a fortune. The ceremony was glamorous and expensive and very Diana Ross. It was also the beginning of Arne realizing that Diana didn't understand how to be anything other than a spectacle. Arne came from old money that didn't need to announce itself. Diana came from poverty and built a career on being seen. Those different relationships to wealth and attention would create constant friction throughout the marriage. Barry Gordy's presence in Diana's life complicated Arne's marriage from the beginning. Barry was still managing aspects of Diana's career. Barry was still the father of Diana's oldest daughter, Rhonda. Barry was still the person Diana consulted for major decisions. Arne tried to understand it, tried to accept that Diana and Barry had history that couldn't be erased. But understanding and accepting the constant presence of your wife's former lover who happens to control her career are two different things. Arne wanted to be Diana's primary relationship. Barry would always be Diana's primary relationship. That reality doomed the marriage before it started. Some of y'all married someone thinking you could be their priority, only to discover someone else already owned that position. Discovered that history and emotional attachment trump current commitment. Discovered that your spouse consulted someone else before consulting you. Felt the powerlessness of competing with a relationship you can't see but can always feel. Arne Naess lived that for 14 years. Watched Diana defer to Barry. Barry's influence override Arne's preferences. His marriage shaped by a man not in it. The children complicated everything. Diana had 3 daughters, Rhonda, Barry's, Tracy, and Chutney, Roberts. Arne and Diana had 2 sons, Arne 1987 and Evan Olav 1988. Blended family dynamics are complex, But the complexity multiplied when Barry remained actively involved in Rhonda's life as her biological father, when Diana's career kept her traveling constantly, when Arne's wealth meant the children grew up with every material advantage but limited parental presence. Arne wanted family, Diana wanted career. The wants were incompatible. Arne's lifestyle and Diana's career were completely opposed. Arne loved climbing mountains, living simply during expeditions, physical challenge without cameras or audiences. Diana's entire existence was performances, appearances, being seen, being photographed, maintaining the image. Arne would spend months planning climbing expeditions. Diana would spend months planning concert tours. Neither could fully participate in the other's world. The marriage became parallel lives that occasionally intersected but never merged. Cultural differences manifested unexpectedly. Arne was Norwegian, reserved, private, uncomfortable with American celebrity excess. Diana was entertainment royalty, trained to perform constantly, needing attention and validation. Arne wanted quiet dinners at home. Diana wanted premieres and galas. Arne wanted hiking trips with the children. Diana wanted them photographed at industry events. The fundamental incompatibility wasn't about love. It was about how they each understood what life should be. Diana's inability to stop being Diana Ross the brand destroyed the marriage. Arne married the woman he'd met, but that woman didn't exist anymore. Barry had spent decades shaping Diana into a commercial product she'd become so completely that separating person from persona was impossible. Arne wanted a wife. Diana could only be Diana Ross. And Diana Ross couldn't have a normal marriage because Diana Ross wasn't a normal person. She was a carefully constructed image that required constant maintenance. Barry's control over Diana's career meant Barry controlled Diana's time, priorities, and decisions in ways that made Arne irrelevant. When Barry said Diana needed to tour, Diana toured regardless of family plans. When Barry said Diana should do a project, Diana did it regardless of Arne's preferences. When Barry's vision for Diana's career conflicted with Arne's vision for their family, Barry's vision won. Arne was married to Diana, but Barry was running Diana's life. That power dynamic was humiliating for a man who'd built his own empire and didn't need Barry Gordy's approval for anything. Some of y'all watched your marriage fail because your spouse couldn't let go of a previous relationship, couldn't stop consulting their ex, couldn't stop prioritizing someone else's needs over yours, felt like a guest in your own marriage. Arne experienced all of that multiplied by Diana's fame and Barry's control. The marriage lasted 14 years but was probably failing by year 5. Arne kept trying, kept hoping Diana would choose family over career, kept believing the marriage could work if Diana just prioritized it. But Diana couldn't prioritize the marriage without deprioritizing her career, and Diana's career was her identity in ways Arne couldn't compete with. Every year made it clearer. The marriage served Diana's image while her energy went to maintaining the brand. The divorce in 2000 was portrayed as mutual and amicable. The reality was messier. 14 years of Arne being marginalized, Barry's influence superseding Arne's role as husband. 14 years of Diana choosing career over family repeatedly. 14 years of Arne realizing the woman he'd married at the Switzerland ceremony wasn't who Diana actually was. The divorce was inevitable. The only surprise was that Arne had stayed as long as he did. Arne's life after divorce revealed the marriage's cost. He went back to mountaineering full-time, to the adventurous life he'd put on hold, to being Arne Naess rather than Mr. Diana Ross. The relief of reclaiming his identity after 14 years of being Diana Ross's husband must have been enormous. Arne had tried to build something with Diana that Diana's identity as Diana Ross made impossible. Walking away meant Arne could be himself again. Diana's narrative about the divorce minimized Arne's role in the failure. Diana emphasized they remained friends. The split was mutual. Diana rarely discussed what actually went wrong or acknowledged Arne's legitimate grievances. Diana's story made the marriage and divorce seem like a natural evolution, rather than like 14 years of fundamental incompatibility that Arne had tried to overcome while Diana refused to change. Arne Naess Jr. died on January 13, 2004, in a mountain climbing accident in South Africa. He was 66 years old. Arne died doing what he loved, climbing mountains, pushing physical limits, living adventurously. The tragedy was he spent 14 years trying to make a marriage work with someone whose priorities made marriage impossible. Those 14 years could have been spent with someone who actually wanted the life Arne wanted to build. Instead, Arne spent them competing with Barry Gordy for Diana's attention and losing. Some of y'all knew Arne died, but didn't know the full story. Didn't know the fairy tale wedding was followed by 14 years of being secondary, while Barry remained primary. Didn't know that Arne had regretted marrying Diana in ways he probably never said publicly, but that people close to him understood. Didn't know that Arne's death meant he never got to tell his full truth about what that marriage cost him. Diana's response to Arne's death was publicly appropriate. Sad statements about the father of her children, acknowledgement of their time together, expressions of loss. But Diana's public grief didn't acknowledge what the marriage had actually been. Didn't acknowledge how Diana's inability to prioritize family had contributed to the marriage's failure. Didn't acknowledge that Arne had spent 14 years trying to build something Diana's attachment to Barry and obsession with career made impossible. Diana mourned Arne as if the marriage had been what it appeared to be publicly, rather than what it actually was. Barry Gordy's continuing influence over Diana throughout her marriage to Arne and after Arne's death proved what Arne had learned. Barry would always be the primary relationship in Diana's life. Diana consulted Barry. Diana deferred to Barry. Diana prioritized Barry's vision for her career over any husband's vision for their family. Arne had tried to change that dynamic and failed. Barry's control over Diana was complete and permanent in ways that made Diana's marriages to other men theatrical productions rather than real partnerships. Arne Naess Jr. deserved better than marrying Diana Ross. Deserved a wife who could be present rather than constantly performing. Deserved to be primary rather than competing with Barry. Deserved a partner who valued family over career. Arne tried for 14 years to make it work. Diana never tried to change anything fundamental about how she operated. The failure of the marriage was Diana's failure to be a wife, rather than Arne's failure to accommodate a superstar. Some of y'all respect Arne for trying as long as he did. Respect that he stayed 14 years, hoping things would change. Respect that he eventually walked away when it became clear Diana would never prioritize the marriage. Respect that Arne reclaimed his life after the divorce and went back to being himself rather than Mr. Diana Ross. Respect that despite everything, Arne remained a good father to his sons. That respect matters because Arne's dignity in the face of an impossible situation was remarkable. The question haunting Arne's story is why he married Diana, why he thought he could build a normal marriage with Diana Ross, why he believed she would change from how she actually was. Arne was wrong about Diana's willingness to change, but trying doesn't make Arne foolish, it makes him human. Diana Ross's legacy includes 2 failed marriages to men who learned you can't be Diana's primary relationship because Barry already is. Robert tried 6 years, Arne 14. Both discovered Diana's career and Barry's influence would always supersede a husband's needs. Both walked away, having wasted years of their lives trying to build something Diana's identity as Diana Ross made impossible. Diana chose Barry and chose career over both marriages. That pattern reveals who Diana is. Barry Gordy's legacy includes destroying Diana's marriages by maintaining control over her career and remaining her primary relationship even when she was married to other men. Barry's presence in Diana's life during her marriage to Arne was inappropriate and undermining. Barry could have stepped back to allow Diana's marriage to succeed. Barry chose to maintain control instead. Barry got what he wanted, continuing influence over Diana, while Arne got 14 years of competing with Barry and losing. Arne's sons, Ross Arne and Evan Olaf, grew up watching their father try to make a marriage work with a mother whose career and Barry's influence made family life impossible. Grew up seeing their father marginalized in his own home. Grew up understanding that Diana Ross, the performer, mattered more than Diana, the mother or wife. The impact of that childhood on Arne's sons is part of the cost of Diana's choices that rarely gets discussed. Arne's death meant his father lost their father while still young men. The years Arne spent trying to make the marriage work were years he could have spent building a different life. The fairy tale that got sold to the public in 1985, Diana Ross marrying a handsome billionaire, international glamour, the perfect second act, was a lie. The reality was 14 years of Arne learning what Robert had learned, of competing with Barry and losing, of trying to build a family where someone's identity was too consumed by stardom to actually participate in marriage. Arne regretted marrying Diana. He probably never said it that directly, but his life after the divorce, reclaiming his adventurous identity, going back to mountains, being Arne Naess rather than Mr. Diana Ross, spoke volumes about what the marriage had cost him. Do you remember when Diana married Arne Naess and it seemed like a fairy tale? Did you know the marriage failed for the same reasons her first marriage failed? Drop a comment sharing your memories of Diana's second marriage, or tell us about relationships where someone's career made marriage impossible. Hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss another trip down memory lane.